Hi, everyone. Welcome to Money Matters TV. I'm your host, Ken Jordan from Princeton Mortgage. We're excited to be here today. I've been getting a lot of questions about the real estate market, about the mortgage market. One of the questions I keep getting asked over the last couple of weeks is leading up to the Federal Reserve decision to lower interest rates. How is that going to impact me? How is that going to impact me as a home buyer, as a home owner? What is it going to do for interest rates? It was such an interesting thing to have happen last week when the Federal Reserve decided to lower interest rates. Something happened that some of us did expect, but certainly most of us didn't, and that was that interest rates actually moved in the opposite direction. Now, don't get me wrong; they moved in a good direction for a couple of days. But what happened was a lot of people were expecting that when the Federal Reserve lowered their federal funds rate by 50 basis points, that we were going to see a downturn in interest rates by 50 basis points. A lot of people don't realize that the Federal Reserve impacts the Fed funds rate, right? Which is going to have a bigger impact on your consumer spending, on your credit cards and things like that. But it doesn't actually have a direct impact on mortgage-backed securities. Mortgage-backed securities is the vehicle where mortgage rates are born. Mortgage rates are based on the supply and demand of certain mortgage-backed securities coupons. Now, what we noticed and what we knew from years ago when rates were actually coming down, of course, that hasn't been the case over the last 24 months or so, but when rates were coming down, what we learned is that the market basically prices in a lot of these Federal Reserve decisions. The idea that the Federal Reserve is going to lower the interest rates by 50 basis points. Once it becomes a consensus, the market builds that in. So more often than not, we don't get a huge drop in interest rates if the Federal Reserve lowers the federal funds rate. A lot of times it remains unchanged. What was interesting about this one, though, was that shortly after the Federal Reserve decided to lower the interest rates, as expected, things remain mostly unchanged. Then a jobs report came out. And the jobs report was really unfavorable for the bond market, unfavorable for mortgage-backed securities. Way more jobs were created than anticipated. Now, we may get a revision in that jobs report. It seems like that seems to be the trend. But what happened after that was that mortgage rates actually ticked back up. All of the improvement that we have seen in interest rates leading up to that Federal Reserve decision was actually wiped away over the last 5 or 6 days after the jobs report, with deteriorations in the rate market each day over probably the last 6 days. Now, they flattened out today, and I know we don't know when we're going to be watching this particular episode, but the reality is that nothing has changed. If you're a homeowner or if you're looking to buy a home, you're still looking to buy a home. And I think that ultimately rates are in a place where they're at a level we can live with for a long time. And if they do continue to trend in the downward direction, which they're still anticipated to do, then I think everyone is going to be okay. I think there was a brief window where some refinances may have been advantageous for some folks, and maybe that window closed, but it will open again. I anticipate that it will. And you just want to make sure you're working with your mortgage person, your mortgage provider, so that you're ready to strike when the iron's hot, so to speak. So it was definitely an interesting couple of days, interesting couple of weeks in the real estate market, leading us to where we are today. In fact, our viewer question today was actually Jane Ackerman from Philadelphia asked a question in line with what we are talking about here, and she had asked, will the lower interest rates slow down the rental market? That's a great question. Now, we know that lower interest rates are not necessarily going to slow down the real estate market. But what we have right now is we have a shortage of shelter. It's not just a shortage of homes for people to buy. There's a shortage of shelter, meaning there's a lack of homes for people to rent as well. I don't think that lower interest rates are going to have an immediate impact on the rental market. In fact, you may see non-owner occupied properties tick up a little bit, which could help the rental supply. But the household formations, the people who are getting married and having children and looking to move out of their parents' house, that reality still continues to add folks to the list of people who need a place to live. So thank you for your question, Jane. I really, really appreciate it. Here's how to send in your viewer question.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
Our guest today, I'm very excited to have Justin Capetola, from managing partner from Bluebell Private Wealth Management. Justin, thank you very much for joining us today.
I'm excited to be here as well.
Fantastic. So, Justin, I know the interest rates are prevailing conversation, especially in because it impacts almost everyone, right? Home ownership, whether it's as our viewer question, rental, but we can't take our eye off of other very, very important financial things that are going on in our world, and especially as we get older. And one of the things that I think still is an important topic to discuss is tax planning strategies for retirees. So I was kind of hoping that you could give us some insight on what's a strategy that a retiree can implement, to save taxes in retirement.
Yeah, so real important. That's something I think a lot of people look forward to, but there's not a lot of information available, or if it is, it's really scattered. But probably two of the more important ones that don't traditionally get a lot of love are the Roth IRA conversion strategies and then the qualified charitable distribution strategies.
So let's talk about the Roth conversion strategy.
Sure.
What is it, and how does it affect my taxes in the current year?
Okay, so a Roth conversion strategy withdraw funds from your traditional IRA and move them, otherwise known as converting them, to a Roth IRA. Okay, so many individuals have been funds in qualified, otherwise known as pre-tax accounts, like 401ks, 403bs, or 457 plans. When the funds are withdrawn from the IRA, what this is going to do, it's going to increase your taxable income by the amount that was withdrawn. Okay, so for example, if your pension or your Social Security totals $75,000 of income, and then you withdraw, let's say, $25,000 for a Roth conversion, what you're basically doing is you're taking your taxable income in that year up to $100,000. So any money that comes out of qualified plans, again, like a 401k, a 403b, or a 457, it's additive on top of other ordinary income that you already had for the current year.
So what you're saying then is, if it go in your scenario, if we went from 75,000, let's say, to 100,000, that's going to impact potentially my tax bracket for that year. Is that right?
It certainly will. Absolutely. So a little bit more behind this. So the idea really behind the Roth conversion is to, basically what you're doing is you're choosing to pay taxes at a lower rate versus being forced to pay taxes at a higher rate down the road. Okay. So if you're retired and your income is low, okay, and thus your tax bracket is also low, it really may be a good idea to use that low tax bracket to your advantage and then pay some taxes now. Okay. If you believe taxes are going up in the future, we have huge debt and deficit in the country. A lot of people are of the belief that, taxes are going to have to go up to really start to put a dent into the debt and deficit. That could be a great way to sort of lower your overall lifetime tax liability.
But retirees are not the only ones that can take advantage of this strategy, correct? I mean, you could do the conversion at any stage, or
you could.
Retirees that really get the most impact.
It's going to have the most impact with the retirees, specifically because your income is ideally going to be lower, right? When you stop working, the whole idea is you stop working, your income comes down. Well, if you're in a situation where, let's say, you're changing careers, you're going back to school, and it's a little bit earlier in your life, yeah, you could potentially use that as a way to, the fact that you're in a lower tax bracket, use that as a time to maybe do some conversions a little bit earlier. But for most people, you get to a point where, you're 62, 63, 64, your income dips. That's when you want to use that lower tax bracket really to your advantage.
And then, how much, it's kind of a crazy question, but how much would someone convert? Their entire 401k or a portion of it? Like how do you gauge that?
So real good question. So you probably wouldn't want to do the entire thing in any 1 year. Okay. So the main reason, the idea behind it is to take advantage of being in a lower income tax bracket in retirement. Okay. So again, if you convert too much, if you converted the entirety of your nest egg, let's say your nest egg is $250,000, if you convert the entirety of that, you're really having the effect of raising your taxes, and thus you're really negating the benefits of actually doing the conversion. Because remember, as I said earlier, any income that comes out of IRAs is additive to existing taxes. Okay, so I would tell people, you should really look at your tax return and then talk with your accountant and then talk with your financial advisor about your specific situation. Okay. If your tax bracket isn't on the low side in retirement, a Roth conversion really may not be too beneficial for you and your situation. Another thing, this is quite a bit nuanced, and this is really where you're going to have to talk to an advisor or an accountant, is when you convert, that has the potential also to increase Medicare premiums. Okay. And this is definitely something that older individuals, at least those 65 and older, really have to be aware of when they're deciding on how much to convert or whether they should convert at all, because those higher premiums could potentially have a negative impact on you.
Is there a maximum amount you can convert in a given year?
There's no maximum that you can convert, but again, the whole idea is that what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're keeping that tax bracket relatively lower, and you want to make sure that you're staying in a lower tax bracket. Again, if you have, another example, let's say you had a $500,000 IRA and you said, I want to convert that. Well, your income in that year is $500,000 plus pension income, plus Social Security income, plus any other income that you have. So that has the effect of potentially throwing you into a higher tax bracket.
But the idea is that the money that's now in the Roth, once it is converted, how are your taxes affected there? Does it grow tax free, or is it less taxes when you take it out? What's the benefit of actually putting it into that Roth?
Yeah, so the benefit of putting in the Roth is twofold. Really, is what you're trying to really do is tax diversify. So you're trying to basically shield some money away from taxation for the rest of your life. And basically what you're doing, again, when you convert, is you're saying, look, I'm choosing to be able to pay taxes now at a relatively lower rate versus where I would be forced to pay taxes, let's say down the road, at a higher rate. And by putting that money into a Roth, again, that money is tax-free forever. And there's also some other estate planning tools that can be used with it. So there's a lot of potential benefits of having money that's in a tax-free state like a Roth IRA.
So you're retired. You did your conversion. Maybe did a big chunk each couple years, or maybe you were in job transition, like you said, and your income was lower 1 year, which gave you the opportunity to maybe convert some. You get into that minimum required distribution age. Does the Roth have a minimum required distribution?
No. So, unlike a traditional IRA, you do not need to take distributions from a Roth IRA. Okay. So once you convert that money, or even if you don't convert this money, even if you have money in a regular Roth IRA, upon reaching age 73 or 75, depending on what your birth year is, that money, the growth of that money is not taxed, nor are distributions required to be taken while you're living. Okay. And as I alluded to earlier, this can be a really powerful tool to grow your wealth, as well as, having some potential estate planning tools where you can pass that money to heirs. They're going to have obviously distribution requirements potentially depending on who they are. But no, again, once that money's in the Roth, it's tax-free, and you don't have to take distributions like you do with a traditional IRA.
That seems like a huge advantage, allowing that money to
Absolutely.
just sit there and grow, and not, because with the required minimum distributions, it's almost a required tax now, right? Like I have, even if I'm in a lower tax bracket, I still have to take money out and get taxed on it if it's not in a Roth. Is that fair to say?
It is. I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is that effectively, when you're taking distributions, you're sort of coming to the table. You're into. You made a deal with the IRS years and years and years ago, and the deal was the IRS allowed you to put money away tax deferred. But the deferral is that key word. So the deferral is money's going to grow. We're not going to tax you on it. But later in life, when you take it, or when we force you to take it through the required distribution process, that's how they're forcing you to pay income taxes, and that's how you're sort of settling up on your side of the deal. So what you're basically doing is you're trying to get ahead of that game by the whole conversion, and you're saying, look, I'm going to withdraw some ahead of time while my bracket's low, pay taxes down here versus forced to be pay taxes potentially up here.
The whole idea of making a deal with the IRS just doesn't sound right to me.
Ken, we're born into a tax system, and sometimes death doesn't even get us out of it. So we have to do our best while we're living to make the best of it.
But is there any benefits to the heirs of money that's being left to them from a Roth versus any other type of asset that's being left to them?
Yeah, so certainly. Now, a lot of these rules have changed, and a lot of these rules are specific depending on who you receive the money from. But largely, there's still a window where you can receive that money into your name. Typically, it's into an inherited IRA. And whether it's a Roth or a traditional, the money can still be received in tax deferred or tax free for a set amount of time. So years ago, you used to be able to have this money grow for you for your lifetime, but the government sort of cut back on some of those the benefits for the inherited beneficiaries.
Gotcha. All right. So, what are
Yep.
some other strategies that can be employed by retirees in addition to the Roth conversion for tax benefit?
So there's probably another one that gets overlooked a lot, but it's one that we see a lot in our business. And when we're talking with people, if we look at someone's tax return and we notice on there that they're making charitable contributions, and we notice that they're charitably inclined, there is a strategy called a qualified charitable distribution that can be employed to really, one, satisfy some or all of your required distribution, okay, if you're of the RMD age. Two, it's going to lessen your tax burden. And then three, obviously, it's going to fund a charitable cause that's important to you. So, generally, if you're giving to charity with a check or cash, and this is what I tell most people, if you're giving to a charity with a check or cash, there's often a better way to accomplish giving that gift, because it's also going to potentially lower your tax burden. And one of that ways is, doing it through an IRA. And that's effectively what a qualified charitable distribution is.
So, in other words, these are donations that you're probably going to make anyway, because you're of the mind to help and give back, and you care,
Yep.
Usually deeply about certain causes, but you're going to make these donations anyway. So that the qualified charitable distribution is just a way for you to make that donation and receive a tax benefit from it, even greater than just writing it off against real income.
Exactly. The biggest benefit of the tax benefit is that if you give the money directly from your IRA, so from your qualified IRA, the charity receives that check, or they receive that funding from you. It counts as your distribution, but you don't actually have to pay taxes on that money that goes directly to the charity. So, again, if you're faced with a situation where you're gifting money over here, writing checks or giving cash, or you can do it over here and it lowers your taxable income, it's sort of a no-brainer. But the issue is that there's certain criteria that have to be met really when you're looking to make these charitable distributions, and people have to be aware of that.
Does it have to be all or nothing, or can you take, in your required minimum distribution stage, can you take a portion of your required minimum distribution for income and the rest a qualified charitable distribution, or does it have to be all or nothing?
No, it definitely doesn't have to be all or nothing. And for most people, that's actually how it's done. You take a portion of your required distribution, and then you can gift that directly to charity. Really doing a QCD, I mean, there are criteria that you have to meet before you can use it. So first and foremost, you have to be at least 70 and a half years old. So people that are 70 and a half, if some people remember this number, this used to be the required distribution age a number of years ago. Since then, through some of these passages, some of these bills, it's increased the age from 71 to 72 to 73, and now for some people it's going to be 75. But this age hasn't increased, so you have to still be 70 and a half years old, and the amount that you give can't exceed $100,000 in any given year. Now, for a lot of people that doesn't matter, but there are some people that may play into it. So as long as you keep it below $100,000 per year, you're fine. One more thing is that,
or your income, total income, cannot exceed 100,000. If it does,
no,
you're not able. Okay.
That's a good point, Ken. It just has to be the actual distribution, the charitable distribution amount can't exceed $100,000 for you in any given year. Your income can certainly be much higher than that. You just can't give more than $100,000 to a charity.
Put your crystal ball together here, and I'm 46. You're younger than me, I think. What do you
much.
think? What do you think the age will be by the time we get to the retiree required minimum distribution age? How have you seen that trend over the last decade or so?
So there's actually been some data that's been released, I think by the Treasury, who they obviously collect the tax receipts in the U.S. and very, very, very few individuals are actually from the IRAs through required minimum distribution. I mean, the vast majority of people, are tapping into the retirement funds way ahead of time. So potentially even before they retire, because it's a source of income and they need that income. So not many people are really using RMDs, or they're not being forced to take them. So, I mean, I guess to answer your question, crystal ball, I definitely see the likelihood that the required distribution, amount is probably scrapped at some point down the road, whether it be 10 or 15 years. I definitely do see it going away.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When you talk about charities, and this may be a tough question to answer, so feel free to stay high level, but what is it that if anyone with a 50C3 designation is a charity? Is there restrictions on what charities you can make donations to? Do there have to be arm length distances between yourself and the charity or the foundation?
Yeah, so the subchapter 501c3. I mean, really in addition, the charitable organization that you give to really has to be a 501c3 charitable organization that's eligible to receive tax deductible contributions. That's sort of the letter of the law. Again, this is a sort of a special situation. Most places can do that. Now, there are places that, let's say, you want to be charitably inclined. Maybe it's a church or a religious organization that's not exactly set up as a 501c3. There are other strategies that you can employ. One could be you just simply gift taxable low basis stock directly to that charity, and that can be any amount, anytime, almost for any reason. It doesn't matter. But that would be something separate from an IRA.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Can you make other you can make other charitable donations in addition to using the qualified charitable distribution?
Exactly. So if you're charitably inclined, typically giving cash or writing a check is the worst way to give to charity. So if you can find any other way to charity, donating a car, if it's donating furniture, if it's donating anything, or donating cash or securities, that's always going to be a better idea, because the idea is that you're going to get some tax benefit to you, but the charity is also going to get something of value from you. So outside of IRAs, that many people could do is if you have, let's say, a low basis stock, right now, a lot of the big tech stocks, have appreciated a lot in value the past 5 years. So, if you're somebody that has, basis in stock that's a lot lower than where the stock's currently trading, you can gift that portion, or you can take any amount of a lot of that stock and gift that to charity. The charity then turns around and sells it, right? They don't pay any taxes on it. And you obviously get the benefit of getting the money to the benefit of receiving the value, and the taxes aren't due because it's a charitable organization. But they have to be able to accept stock donations. That's sort of the key behind that.
In what situation would a charity not be able to accept stock donations? Just the way they're set up?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, most charities will be able to. The ones that are not, they're likely going to be smaller charities, local charities. In that case, look, I'm not going to fault anybody. If your heart's intent on supporting that charity and you have to give them cash or write them a check, absolutely do so. Or, talk to them about the benefits of, maybe you can increase potentially some donations if you had the ability to receive stock donations or capital donations. But typically they're going to be, smaller charities, charitable organizations.
There's so many great charities out there, and the fact that the code is set up in such a way that allows us to give back, I think it's an important thing to remember. I think the fact that this is hard written into the code is fantastic. And some of these charities today, they wouldn't be there if it wasn't for opportunities like this from folks who have the resources. They don't need it anymore, so to speak, right? And they want to give back. Those charities wouldn't even be around if it wasn't for stuff like this. So I think this is great information, Justin. I can't thank you enough for joining us today. I learned a lot. I said when we started the show, like, these kind of conversations are fun because I'm just as curious as the listeners and how this stuff works. So I appreciate you joining us today, and hopefully you'll come back.
I'm more than happy. Thanks for having me, Ken.
You bet. My pleasure. All right. So our next guest is going to be Nancy Marks, president of Marks Communications. Don't hesitate to join us for our next episode. But until then, just remember that your money matters.